Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens, and this is Carly Stevens Books for all things writing, publishing, and indie author life. And today we're going to talk about writer's block. So writer's block, in my opinion, is more of a symptom than a cause. Normally there is some other underlying cause for which writer's block is the symptom. So identifying what that cause is can be useful in overcoming what feels like that inability to move forward in your writing. So in this video, I'm going to give you lots of ideas for overcoming writer's block. If something doesn't work, try something else. If that doesn't work, try something else, and maybe you'll get to the bottom of what is the matter and you'll be able to break through. I have published quite a few books, all in different genres over several years. And so I definitely have encountered that feeling of just malaise or a lack of motivation or a lack of ideas or whatever it might be. And so I found a variety of ways that work for me. So that also may be the case. I'm going to, again, give you lots of different options, and what works for you one day might not be the thing the next day, but now you have a bunch of options in your arsenal to beat that writer's block. So that's it for our disclaimers. Let's get into it. So I want to start with the most common sort of problem that can cause writer's block, and that is a lack of motivation. Okay, you're unmotivated to write your book. Here are some things that you can do. Number one, skip to the juicy stuff. So by that I mean, you don't have to write in a particular chronological order. If you know that there is a really interesting scene coming up in the future, maybe it's intense fight scene, or maybe it's the first kiss, or whatever it might be, and you'd rather be writing that scene than whatever is coming up next, just give yourself permission to skip ahead to that scene. You're going to need to edit anyway, and so you'll fix anything that might be out of sync later on, but yeah, skip ahead to that fun stuff. Along those same lines, something that has been extremely helpful, like game-changingly helpful to me, is using brackets. Now, if you have been around the channel for a while, you've probably heard me suggest this as a helpful solution, but if you are stuck on a scene or even something like a name or, something that you would need to research, use brackets and just say name or they escape and it's awesome, and then move on to the next thing. That way I can just do a search for brackets and immediately zero in on those places after I've made a lot of progress that I need to fill out during editing or whenever it is that I really need that information. Again, that can help you to make progress even when you're feeling not super motivated to do the next thing. Something else that helps with motivation for some people is accountability. There are a variety of ways to have some accountability in your life, but if you need that external sort of pressure to carry on, then you can either find a writing partner and, keep each other updated on what you're writing. You can also start telling people when you anticipate this section to be done, or in the case of my debut novel, Furion Rising, I started saying this is when the book will be published. Now, it was far in the future, but not so far that I could just procrastinate endlessly. It was about a year out, and if you think about all the steps that need to happen in advance of that, I did need to get a move on with my writing, with my editing, with my publishing tasks, with pre-order stuff. So if that is something that's going to help you for this project, then do it. Have accountability with either the public at large or with an individual that you trust. Just make sure that if you do start along that path of accountability, that you do hold yourself accountable to meet those deadlines that you've stated. Something else that helps with motivation is, or can help, is having a reward system. So set up in advance rewards that you will earn by completing different tasks. Now, this is going to look different depending on you, your personality, your project. So you don't need to wait for the entire draft of your book to be completed before you give yourself a little something. Maybe you reach 10,000 words, you pass that mark. That's impressive. Many people do not write something that is 10,000 words long. And so when you reach that milestone, have something in place, treat yourself to whatever it is that makes the most sense for you. Maybe it's a little snack, a drink, maybe it's a day off, maybe it's just something that's going to be special and doable for you. And make sure that that is established so that you can get to that place and then earn that reward. Again, either at the end of your drafting process, or if that's a long ways out, then checkpoints along the way. That's going to be more motivating than, well, in 50,000 words, you can give yourself something. Something else that has helped me tremendously with motivation is to switch locations. This sounds like such a simple thing, and it is such a simple thing, but I cannot tell you how many times this very simple trick has gotten me up out of the couch, sounds like I'm in the couch. But yeah, in the afternoons, personally, I have quite a bit of energy in the morning, and then in the afternoon, I have an intense slump. But when I was writing my first series, the Tanyuan Academy Epic Fantasy Trilogy, I was a full-time teacher, and so I needed to draft these big books, or at least a big chunk of them, in the summertime. So in June, I would really push myself to write as much as I could. And there were times when I was really tired and did not have motivation to write. So a trick that I would often do is I would switch locations. I would go to a coffee shop. I would go to a bar. I would order something. And that meant that I was also financially invested in staying there and, banging out some words. If you're unable to drive to a separate location, maybe you're still in high school or something like that, choose a different room in the house with fewer distractions in it. Bring your laptop, bring your notepad, whatever you use to write, and just that small change can be enough to wake up your brain to go, okay, it's go time, and then off you go, and you can get more words down than you would have otherwise. For others, the process is not quite as haphazard, but routine can be that thing that sparks the motivation when it's, when the motivation isn't there, routine can help you to get the words down. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, a writing routine is not my trick of choice, but I know lots of people have benefited extremely from just showing up day in, day out at a particular time, and that time is set aside for writing. That is all that they allow themselves to do for that half hour or 2 hours or whatever it is, and the number of words that they get down during that time is less relevant than just showing up again and again and establishing that habit. For many people, this is crucial to finishing their book, whether they feel like it or not. Something else that helps when motivation is really low, and this is more for people who have finished something, maybe not published it, but finished it, shown it to some people, is revisiting positive feedback. Now, like I said, I am a published author, and so a lot of people have read my books and have left a variety of pieces of feedback. So it can be helpful, though, to revisit some of those positive reviews, those kind things that people have said. I gather up those moments when I meet people and they say, oh, I loved such and such a book, or Laertes is the best book I've ever read. That has happened like twice and my mind is blown. So I hang on to those things to remind myself that I am not a failure when I'm not feeling super motivated to write my story or my book. Instead, I have what it takes, and I am going to finish this book eventually. Sometimes having that shot in the arm is what I need to go, okay, all right, let's move on. Now, your issue may not be motivation. Maybe your issue is ideas. This is rarer, but definitely something that comes up. So if you have a problem with either ideas for a new story, or maybe your current one is starting to feel kind of dried out and not inspiring and you need some ideas to refresh it, unplug. That is my number one recommendation, is unplug from social media and doom scrolling and some of those things, and instead take a shower, take a long walk, just get out of that media consumption mode. And sometimes just freeing up that headspace can be enough to allow new ideas in. Bonus points if you have a playlist of music while you're going on that walk, or unplugging and kind of getting away from your other responsibilities or pieces of media. Often that is when I realize things about my story, like, oh, it has to be this way. Oh my gosh. And so I'll take out the notes app on my phone and just make a quick note and continue on my walk. If ideas are still not flowing, then I would read more. Sometimes just reading, watching more stories can give you more ingredients, and it reminds me of Sherlock Holmes. Data. Cannot make bricks without clay. So you need that clay, right? You need the materials for your imagination to play with. And sometimes just reading and giving yourself that break is going to be enough to restart those ideas and that creativity. Others benefit from taking disconnected notes about their story. This has been very helpful to me from time to time, where I'm world building or something, and I'm not writing exactly, but I'm making some notes about the characters or the place or what I would like to see happen. Brainstorming exercises can be useful as well. You can find lots of those. There are great ones at the end of every Writing Excuses podcast with Brandon Sanderson and Mary Robinette Kowal and Dan Wells. So if that is something that you think would be helpful, it's great information for writers, and they have a little exercise at the end for you to practice that particular thing that they've been talking about. Something else that could be the problem with the ideas in your story is that the story itself has gone in the wrong direction. And so you're kind of trying to go through where there is no road forward that is any good. So it could be helpful to stop and establish or rewrite some kind of outline. Now, you might not be a full-on plotter yourself. If you are, then maybe reworking that outline to be truer to the characters in the story so far is the way to go. If you're more of an exploratory discovery writer, then maybe figuring out where in a basic outline your story would be can give you hints about what kind of thing the story might benefit from happening next. Hopefully that makes some sense. But if you think about a very simple plot arc, for example, you have the exposition, you have the, call to adventure usually, and then these certain checkpoints, including the midpoint where there's a sort of come to Jesus moment where people are realizing something about themselves and the situation. and toward the end there's usually some kind of, you know, extreme test for the main character to show how they've changed over the course of the story. So it's not like you need to plan out every scene, but having some sense of where your story is in the context of what it's going to be when it's finished can be helpful. Then you can look at different beat sheets, like Save the Cat Writes a Novel, and what they would suggest is the next beat in that story. So all those things can be helpful for beating writer's block, because then your story might open up and you realize, oh, okay, so I shouldn't have gone this way. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit, and now it's smooth sailing in this direction. That's what I'm getting at with all this outline business. A few other general recommendations for writer's block, or things that can cause writer's block, is perfectionism. Perfectionism is a big one. Nobody starts out being a perfect writer. Nobody ends up being a perfect writer. I taught English for over 10 years at the high school level, and I love Shakespeare, but he's not flawless. I can point to things that if I were his editor, I would have taken out, which sounds arrogant of me, but it's true. But when he's good, he's unbeatable. Like he's so good. But I bring that up to say that nobody is going to be perfect. And if you hold yourself to this unreasonable standard of being perfect the first time around, of making your first draft look like somebody else's 10th draft, then you'll never get any of these ideas out of your head. You'll never get those characters down on paper. And so I don't know what the solution is exactly, but if there's a way that you can give yourself the permission to be bad, or say, this is going to be the bad draft. This draft is going to be crap. And I'm just going to be proud of myself for writing down something. Then that's a really healthy way of being. And then you can always improve what you have down. If you look back at some of the early pages of your book and you cringe and you go, it could be better, that's actually not a terrible thing. That means that you have an idea that you know you've improved, basically, or you have the capability of improving, because you see that this is not quite up to the standard that you want. And so if you learn and work with those pages, then your work can improve. So yeah, perfectionism is an absolute creativity killer. It might be good if you are feeling that perfectionist tendency to make disconnected notes about the story to start with, just to get in the habit of being creative in a way that is non-judgmental. These are not the words, this is not the phrasing that you're going to use in the story itself. This is thinking more about the characters and the setting. At a certain point, you do need to transition into actually writing the story. But perfectionism can be a major cause of writer's block. So those are a few ideas to try. Again, consider these all experiments. Try things and see what works for you. Sometimes it's not the story that's the issue. Sometimes it's a mental hurdle. So I mentioned perfectionism. Another mental hurdle might be, I haven't finished already, and here I am, I'm like almost 40, and I haven't written that book that I wanted to publish 10, 20 years ago. Don't beat yourself up. Writing waits for you. There is no timeline that it has to meet. If you've been querying your story to be traditionally published and it's not being picked up, don't beat yourself up about that. Instead, continue to work on your craft, pivot, be open to the process, enjoy the process, instead of just trying to bang out this book by a particular timeline or holding yourself to these unreasonable standards. Enjoy the process of writing. If you don't enjoy the process of writing, I would argue maybe writing is not not for you. Now, there are going to be frustrating days, that's not what I'm saying, but if you don't take joy in the journey, if you just want the destination and you're not, soaking up these different moments along the way, then writing is probably not going to be for you. It's a difficult go. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you need to find those joyful moments as you go along the way, rather than holding yourself to this very tight timeline and I just want this to be done. That can be another issue, another thing that contributes to writer's block, because it's not the writing that you want, it's the book that you want. So that requires a bit of a mental shift. Another cause of some writer's block is, let's say you began a story and it was something that you started in high school. Like my debut novel, Fury and Rising, I started writing when I was 17. It needed a lot of revision and rewriting and all of that before it was ready to be published many years later. But maybe you are working on that book that you started a long time ago and you're still working on it, but your heart is just like not in it anymore. Maybe you have changed as a person. Maybe these characters and this situation and this plot are not speaking to where you are right now. Maybe you've moved past it. That is something that you might want to kind of, maybe you can grieve that project a little bit and say, this is not something that's going to be finished now. Maybe what's going to help your writer's block is moving on to a different project that is the right project for you right now. What I'm not advocating for is just general shiny object syndrome, where you're constantly starting a new thing and never finishing anything. But that can be a legitimate choice to pivot from a story that spoke to where you were to one that speaks to where you are now. So be open to that possibility. And then finally, sometimes writer's block is caused by deeper issues like depression or stress or things like that, where really the solution is not writing at that moment, but it's rest, it's therapy, it's working through some of these things that put you into more of a survival mode than a creative mode. And that's okay. You might need to take a season to just work on yourself and make sure that you're in an okay place before you return to that kind of situation where you have something creative in the tank and you have something to give. Maybe you need to be given to for a little while before you go back to writing your book. So that is a lot about overcoming writer's block, simple tricks that you can try, deeper issues that might be the cause. I hope that these things are helpful to you. Try different ones. Treat them as an experiment. Don't think of yourself as a failure for having writer's block. We all go through it. I am overwhelmed with story ideas, and there are still lots of days when I don't feel like writing. And then there are other days when I'm off to the races and I write a lot. So it's very, very common to feel writer's block. If you never did, it would be a little unusual. So find the things that are going to help you most to overcome that, to meet you where you are, whatever the cause of that symptom is. It can be overcome. Maybe you need to take a step back for a brief time. Maybe you need to pivot in one way or another, but you can, if you are in this for the long haul, if you are dedicated to your story and you enjoy writing when it's good, there are ways to get through that writer's block. You just need to be dedicated and determined to do it. So try different things, see what experiments work for you. This is not a complete list of ways to overcome writer's block. So if you can think of another one that I did not bring up in this video, please add it to the comments below. I would appreciate that. But this is a question that I get a lot. How do you overcome writer's block? And I hope that this video has helped to answer that for you. All right, make sure to like this video if you like it, subscribe if you're new, and check out my website for more resources for writers. I have a whole detailed PDF about different ways to self-publish, for example, and in checklist form. Yeah, that is it for me today. Have a good life, be of good cheer, and I will see you next week. Bye.